I've noticed that in interviews recently, where one of the things I'm asking staff in the interview process is, what drives you? A very blunt question, but what actually motivates you? Is it money? Is it learning? Is it success? Is it the title? Everyone's got their different needs. And then when you get to that root of why they really want the job, then you can make the offer accordingly. And what offer isn't just the money, it's the offer, and this is what you're going to be doing in the role. Example, we just hired somebody who is really into the production technology side of things, and they just love learning different and new things. So when we made the offer, we made a fair offer, but we didn't, they were on a good salary. We actually paid less than they were on because we couldn't afford it. And we were honest about that. But at the same time, we said, but you're going to learn all these other things. And that only came out from the fact that we were in the interview and I was asking, what drives you? And then I discovered that learning is more important than money to her. She'll sacrifice, I think it was £3,000 on her pay packet for that. It wasn't about that extra couple £100 a month to her. It was about the learning opportunity in our company. That was far more valuable to her. And she's joining.
I think that's something that's a really underrated skill. Is a lot of people sacrifice money for long-term greedy is the best way to put it. Like I've always, throughout my career, and I appreciate this is coming from a slightly different place because I'm running my own business, right? So I can kind of say this, but I've always taken lower salaries to learn. And I really do believe you should earn or learn. One is ideal, both is great. But if you get neither, then you should quit. And I think you need to pick your lane on that because in most jobs that pay you a lot of money, you're not really going to learn a huge amount. But also when you're at the beginning of your career, the best thing that I think you can do if you can afford to, of course, coming from a place of privilege, is to learn as much as humanly possible. Like I wouldn't be sitting here had I not taken a job that was probably 20 grand less than I should have been paid a year to work for a PE firm where I learned how to build and scale service-based businesses because I worked so closely with the CEO. Like he taught me everything about hiring, managing, P&Ls, pitching, decks, like everything I could possibly need to know about running a business. I learned from that person. Completely. But the sacrifice that I made, that was the earning.
So a great example of that, a guy came up to me in the gym car park the other day and he was talking about the brand and he loves the brand, etc. And then he said to me, he goes, I really want to get my son a job with you. And I said, what is it? He's never had a job. He did a degree in marketing. Okay. I said, we don't need anyone in marketing right now. He's welcome to do an internship. This guy's very successful. So the kid doesn't need money. So I said, all right, well, fine. He could have an internship in marketing. I can put him in touch with my head of marketing. We can see. He said, okay, oh, it's in Northampton though, is it? Yeah, it's in Northampton. Okay. It's an hour drive. Oh, yeah, I don't know if he's going to do it. Why? And then he goes, well, and I literally went at this, just drop it then. I said, there's no point. I said, if he's not willing to get in the car for an hour, you come and do the internship and learn.
Yeah.
Then
you're not worth hiring.
Yeah. And then I said, and he was just telling me how he wants his son to get some experience and the market's really hard out there. He's in the fortunate position that this guy has a lot of money. In other words, the son doesn't need income because he's got his dad. Live at home and his dad's going to give him the money he needs. Take advantage of the situation. You've got an opening from the CEO and the founder to go and just, take this position and learn quickly. And you might discover your passion in digital marketing.
The best thing I ever did was internships. And back then they were unpaid, right? Now you have to pay people minimum wage, but which I agree with. I think that's the right play. But back then you didn't get paid. I got paid £25 a week, I think it was, for travel and food, which didn't go very far in central London, I can assure you. But I learned so much. And I think one of the best things that you can do in the early stages of your career is just do as many things as say yes to as many things as humanly possible, meet as many people as humanly possible, like do the crazy hours, say yes to everything, because you have the rest of your life to go, I don't want to commute for an hour, to be honest. Yeah. Like now when you have no responsibilities is the best time to be doing something like that, because who knows what that's going to lead to? Who knows if and when you might exit my first years and go on to do something else and remember that you had this intern who was really fucking sick and take your, that's how all of my opportunities have come about, from people knowing me and working with me and whatever. They've all popped up in different ways. Yeah,
that's it. I completely agree with that. I think meet as many people as you can.
But people seem scared to do that now. I have a theory, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I have a theory that a lot of young people have this the stereotype for young people is like, oh, they're entitled, they don't want to work, they don't put the effort and all that kind of stuff. And I understand that, but I think the reason that is the perception is because a lot of young people entered the workforce during COVID.
Yes.
And so the norm was working from home. The norm was being paid a lot of money because the market was wild. Like everyone got laid off and then no one had any staff to execute, and it was just like crazy. And so a lot of people don't know any different. And I think there's a balance there of the norm for them was working from home, but working from home, in my opinion, not necessarily saying it's fact, is something that really drives a lot of like social anxiety and like not having the confidence to go out and ask those opportunities or say that you want this thing, or there's a lot of over analysis as well. So like, well, my friend's doing this, well, maybe I should try that, and like not really paying attention to what you feel is good for you.
Yep.
And in conversations that I've had with like previous member of staff and all this kind of stuff, the thing that seems to be the common denominator is everyone that entered the workforce at the same point or around the same point of COVID are all the ones who feel the most like probably lost in their decision making about their career and therefore don't necessarily make decisions at all, or feel like I don't want to travel an hour to do that because like, why would I do that?
So there's 2 points here.
Which comes off as entitled to some people.
Yes. So yeah, I completely agree. I think so if you break it down, the COVID thing is definitely a big impact, working from home. And we do a hybrid. So the production is in 5 days a week because it's physically doing orders. But the head office is 2 to 3 days a week, Mondays to Fridays from home. And we've got that blend, and we created, I kept it simple, created like a rule, which is I don't want to see you in the office on a Zoom. So if you're doing Zoom meetings, do those on Mondays and Fridays from home. Use those 3 days to connect. And we have had surveys with the staff where we said, look, would you come back more to the office? And there is a lot of resistance, generally due to they like the balance. So then I always end it with, look, that's fine. And, we'll go with what the majority want to a degree. However, bear in mind, if you're young and you've just entered in the COVID time, to 2020 onwards, you started working. So let's say you're 26 years old and younger now, then you don't realize how much it's impacting your career, because sitting next to that peer or next to that manager and learning from them directly, it's those small conversations that physically happen that you...
It's osmosis.
Yeah, you just learn and pick up that energy, and that's what's going to propel your career. So you're doing it to yourself. You're doing a disservice to yourself. And so, yeah, we're on that journey, kind of bringing it back to the office still. But it is hard because obviously we're a baby brand. We've got a 93% female workforce. And we respect the fact that they have childcare requirements, and we have to be supportive of that. And so I respect that. And at the end of the day, as long as they get the job done, that's all that matters. It's not about the hours that they do for me. I'm not into that.
Have you ever seen that episode of Friends when when Rachel doesn't get promoted, and then she works out that all the people that are getting promoted all smoke, and they're all in the smoking area with the boss? I feel like it's like that. If you need to be in the office visible, because the most visible person is the one that's going to be top of mind. Coming back to what we were saying earlier around branding, your part of your personal brand is being in the right rooms at the right time with the right people, including in the office when the CEO walks through and you say good morning and they recognize you, or including when you post something on LinkedIn and the CEO sees it or the CMO sees it and goes, oh, Jonny posted that. That's really interesting. Why is he posting that? I think a lot of people really underestimate how important being visible in an office or a building or a company or a friendship group or a dating app or like whatever it might be is to the success of whatever it is that you're trying to achieve.
I think the way to summarize it is, if you scale it 0 to 10, intelligence, you know what you're good at, what you're bad at. If you do not communicate that intelligence, it's irrelevant. So
it's like that quantum physics theory, isn't it? Like if you put a cat in a box.
Yeah. I don't know that one.
It's like I can't remember what it's called. Ollie probably knows.
I've heard of it.
Schrodinger's cat.
Right. Okay.
So there's a cat in a box.
Yeah.
Like, is the cat dead or alive? You don't know because it's in a box. Like, it's the same kind of thing. If you have intelligence, no one knows whether you have it or not because you can't see it or hear it. Yeah.
Well, that's it. So if you don't communicate what you're up to, what you're doing, if you don't communicate the activities you're doing in the office to the right people, and that's very hard to do remotely, whereas it's much easier to do in the office because you say one thing, 50 people on the floor hear it.
Yeah.
You say one thing to somebody on a Zoom, one person's heard it.
Yeah.
And that's the key, is that how the communication spreads of your intelligence and what you're doing. And I think that's the key, is some of the most successful people are actually successful because they know how to communicate what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if you're too introverted, don't get me wrong, it's good to be humble. It's good to, sometimes it is good to keep your mouth shut and just not say anything. That's very important.
Is that directed towards me?
Not at all. But some, you hear the old adage about the he who speaks last, etc. Wins. Who speaks last wins. And at the end of the day, that is true. That is definitely true, because God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should listen more. But you do have to communicate your intelligence, because if you don't, people don't know it's there. That is important. So there's a balance you have to strike. And coming back to that COVID point and remote working, it's so hard to do that from a remote position, completely. And the only thing I would say is there is now this emergence of these online communities now. And I found it where there's a couple of communities I've joined, found it really interesting. So basically what I've done is a couple of people online I follow, I've joined their patrons, and then they've got Discords and stuff, and you can talk to and that's interesting. You can build a network. I was talking to a guy the other day. So I've bought an Airbnb property, for example, just as an investment. And the way I learned this was through this Patreon club. So talking to a guy in Suffolk, of all places, about how he makes 15% on his money in Suffolk on Airbnb. And it's a really clever business model. And I would have never thought to do that. Don't do property. I've done bridge loans and stuff before, but that's it. And so I know nothing about property. I'm a retailer. And then through this guy, I learned about Airbnb, and I've structured it. We're doing the deal as we speak, and we're buying this place, this Airbnb property. Me and my brother's in property, so he understands it. And I put the Airbnb spin on it. And it's a really interesting business model. And I'm not distracted with it when my brother runs it all, but I only learned that from being in the right community. And I did that online. So I would say, if you are work from home and you are in that position, what you could do to turn it on its head is go online and build those communities. And that's a way you can at least network and build some of that self-confidence. It doesn't solve the problem, though. In your actual job, you're going to propel yourself quicker within your company by communicating, and that is better done in front of 50 people in the office as opposed to 1 on a Zoom,
or even in front of like 5,000 on a Zoom. Like, I think the connections that you make in person is far more substantial. I want to kind of bring it back to my first years for a minute. What do you think, looking back, has been the hardest part of running this business?
There's been many hard parts. So,
because my whole thing is like, so many people aren't honest. Like, it's all cupcakes and rainbows. Like, oh yeah, I'm running this business. Yeah, I mean, no, you're not one of those people, but I think part of the reason why I love speaking to people on this podcast is like, it gives a bit of a glimpse into what it's actually like running a business, because sometimes it's really fucking horrible.
So there's various hard things. Getting rid of really nice people who are just bad at the job is a hard thing to learn. Cash is always hard. Cash is like I think Theopatheta says it's cash is a cancer, right? It's if you don't have cash, it's like a cancer. It will kill your business. And so in the early days, cash, because we were constantly fundraising with private investors. But we were very lucky. We met a retail billionaire who very early, who took a liking to us and invested. And to be frank, his network enabled us to access investors quickly, and we were genuine in our approach, authentic, etc., and people invested. And so that kind of always kept us ticking. But listen, there's been times where we had to do payroll, and I had to make up that the banking dongle wasn't working because we couldn't pay people. Yeah. And I was still fundraising, and so I think we had to pay everybody on the 3rd of the next month, blaming it on HSBC and their banking dongle. But the truth is, we had no cash in the bank.
Do you know what's funny is I think so many businesses have been in that same point. I listened to a podcast with Jamie Lang, who runs Candy Kittens, like
Right.
big company now. They're in pretty much every supermarket in the UK. And he was saying there's been times